So, I cannot talk about this video without getting into spoiler territory, as obvious as I think that is. So, if you don't want spoilers, don't watch this video. That said, that was your one and only warning. I'm going to be moving past this. Now, for the other disclaimers, ignore the mess, please. Winter break, I get home, room's a mess, I unloaded all my college stuff, yada yada. My room's a mess. Your room is a mess. I know your room is a mess. So don't judge me, okay? Also, I don't have headphones or anything to record this with, so this is going to be a very badly edited video, but aren't all of my videos badly edited anyways? So, yeah, we're going to talk about Spider-Man No Way Home spoilers. The ifs, the buts, the candies, the nuts, everything I liked, everything I didn't like, yada yada. So to preface, I am a Spider-Man nut. I love Spider-Man, I love the character. Um, I've seen every movie, but that's not really much of a feat. I haven't read comics. I'm not really a reading kind of guy, unless it's like reading within my specific like academic field. I'm very much into like TV though, so I've seen a bunch of the different cartoons and yada yada. I say that all to essentially mean is I understand the character. I love this character. I, like many other people, have a personal relationship to the character of Spider-Man, to the character of Peter Parker. I loved the Maguire movies. Grew up on them as a kid, as most people my age did. The Amazing Spider-Man. Hated them both when they came out. This summer of 2021, I went back and I watched them both. I actually liked the first one a lot more than I remembered. It's solid, in my opinion. It's really good. From what I recall, it suffers from major weird editing stuff in the first 30 minutes of the movie. Everything else after that is really, really good. Amazing Spider-Man 2 looks great, but story-wise is horrible, obviously. We all know that. The acting is great, though, but the story, the plot, the characters, yada yada, really weird, bad, electro, right? Amazing Spider-Man 2 sucks. Homecoming. I didn't really like Homecoming. Like, I felt like, by now, it's been 4 years since Homecoming came out. You've seen the video essays of Spider-Man Homecoming is a bad Spider-Man movie, or yada yada yada, MCU Spider-Man is not accurate, or stuff like this. I rest within the camp that the MCU Spider-Man is not kind of the Spider-Man that I envision. It's not the Spider-Man that I'm able to kind of relate to, or anything of that nature. And so, with the MCU Spider-Man, Spider-Man is a character that you're wanting to relate with. Whether it be money struggles or relationship struggles and trying to balance different aspects of your life, Spider-Man is a character that we can all relate to. And I think a bunch of people could not do that in Homecoming. They couldn't relate to the Peter Parker in Homecoming because he was a 15-year-old kid, because he had a tech suit given to him by a billionaire philanthropist or whatever, right? So Homecoming, in my opinion, isn't really Peter Parker. Like, it's a cute story in and of itself, about like a kid who happens to be a superhero who's trying to go on a date to prom with this girl, and her father happens to be the bad guy. It's a very kind of like cliche, almost Hallmark, kind of like, teenage love story drama, kind of reminding me of Sky High. Any of you all remember that live action superhero movie from like 2005, Sky High? That's what Homecoming reminds me of. And it's not bad per se, it's a good time. Kind of like Venom 1, except Venom 1 was objectively horrible. I feel like Homecoming is more up in the air, right? Anyways, I say all that to say I did not enjoy Homecoming a whole lot. For me, it was like a 6 out of 10. Okay? That's just me. Far From Home, I loved. I loved Far From Home, every bit of it, from beginning to end. Found no issue with it, no quirk, nothing. I loved the movie because it took Peter Parker from Homecoming, and especially, post Endgame, and made him into a character that I could actually sympathize with. I could, put myself in his shoes, and not only that, but I could see Peter Parker as a character starting to grow beyond the shadow of Tony Stark. He doesn't have anyone really that he could lean on, for financial needs or for this or for that. He's got to do it all his own. Because Nick Fury is present in the film, but he's not really helping Peter Parker. Not really. So yeah, I loved Far From Home. No Way Home is complicated. Okay? My nose is acting up. So, again, spoilers. It's all true. Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, Charlie Cox as Daredevil. It's all true. Okay? And I knew going into the movie, I had seen a couple like thumbnails on YouTube or Instagram of spoilers and stuff, so I was spoiled, but I mean, like, everyone knew about it before the movie anyways, so it wasn't really a spoiler in my opinion. For me, anyways. I mean, I'm not going to go around telling people, hey, Tobey Maguire's in the movie or whatever, but I didn't feel spoiled because I was just like, oh, I already knew that, So, it's all true. Fan service wise, it lives up to the hype. But with where the movie left off and kind of the big twist in the middle of the movie that's supposed to get your heart wrenching, you know what I'm talking about, and I'll say it specifically in a minute, I feel falls flat. So for that twist moment, Aunt May's death, I hated. Furthermore, I hated Aunt May in this movie the whole time. I could not stand her in the way that she was treating Peter with, how he's supposed to be a superhero and yada, yada, yada. I didn't like it. I felt like that she was trying to control Peter. And I can understand a parent, wanting to be protective over your child, over, someone that you've spent a good quarter of your life raising or whoever. I understand that. And I get it, but I felt like it was way too much here. Like when Willem Dafoe's Goblin went into Feast to meet Aunt May, and Peter was just like, okay, I'm going to send them all back. When May snapped and she was like, no, don't do that, I was like, okay, weird take, but okay, And like at this point, the characters didn't know that they were going to go sent home to die, and so that's why Peter wanted to cure them. But then there's like a couple of complications there, right? So like if all of the villains teleported to the MCU moments prior to their death, okay, whether they are cured or not does not necessarily disable their death when they go back to their original universe. Now some characters it does, like Max Dillon and Flint Marko. I think that's his last name. Sandman and Electro. Because he's no longer made of sand and electricity, respectively, okay? When they go back to their original world, there's no way for them to die. Like, Electro can't be overpowered in electricity because he can't harness that much electricity anyways. Sandman didn't die in Spider-Man 3. He left, but anyways, whatever. Yeah, but like a character like Willem Dafoe, Green Goblin, the glider was coming full speed at him, about to impale him. For him to have been teleported into the MCU moments before that happened, and then to be cured in the MCU, and then teleported back over to the Raimiverse right before his death, I don't think the glider's just instantly gonna stop, especially if it was already just like a couple inches away from him when he teleported, right? So, I was a little confused about that. But then also, right, like if you want to get really technical with it, say Green Goblin is cured, okay? Say he survives, okay? And then he goes back over to the original Raimiverse, okay? Norman Osborn would still be alive then in Spider-Man 2 and presumably in Spider-Man 3, which means the events of Spider-Man 2 and 3 would be drastically different. Doc Ock probably would not be Doc Ock. And if that's the case, how would he be able to go to the MCU? You get like a whole bunch of like time travel and like multi-dimensional stuff that's going on, right? And so obviously a lot of that stuff is different, and it's the MCU, so they're not going to play with it, right? Like as long as it doesn't pertain to the mainline MCU, they're not going to touch it, like with X-Men. Okay, so like those are just weird, complicated plot pickings that I'm doing. But the main two things that I didn't like with the film, that was just a side tangent. The first main thing was Aunt May. I do not like Aunt May in this movie. First of all, I need to rewatch Homecoming. I haven't seen it since like 2018, so I do need to rewatch it. But from what I recall in Homecoming, Aunt May plays a parental type role where it's not like she doesn't care what Peter does, but she knows that Peter probably knows best, right, about what he's doing. And so she lets Peter get in his own devices, and if he messes up, it's a learning experience for Peter, which is a decent way to parent, in my opinion. Like, there's obviously wrong ways that can go, right? And there's obviously extreme ways that can go, like, absolutely horribly. All that to say, that's the kind of role, from what I remember, I do need to rewatch it, from I remember in Homecoming. Okay, and then at the end of the movie, when she finds out that Peter is Spider-Man, she's like, what the heck? Why are you Spider-Man? But then in Far From Home, of course it happens after Endgame, but anyways, in Far From Home, she uses Spider-Man popularity for things like Feast and yada yada. And like, I understand if her heart's in the right place, trying to promote Feast, for like homeless people or people who need food and stuff like that. I get it, all good, yada yada, right? But that, in context of her attitude in Spider-Man 3, puts a really bad taste in my mouth. I don't like Aunt May in Spider-Man 3 at all. I don't. But, alternatively, I love the idea of making Aunt May Tom Holland's, Peter Parker's, Uncle Ben. Because instead of Uncle Ben, in this universe, being the catalyst for Peter kind of getting his life together and, for being Spider-Man. Here it's Aunt May, except in some instances it doesn't really work, right? So, like, obviously he's been Spider-Man for at least 4+ years at this rate. Technically longer because of the whole blip thing, right? But he's been Spider-Man for at least 4 years, okay? I feel like the whole premise of with great power comes great responsibility comes naturally over time, especially with Homecoming and Far From Home under his belt of Vulture and Mysterio. Okay, so he understands that to some degree. I don't know why May felt like she needed to tell him that then and there on her deathbed. And it was supposed to be this huge, like, Uncle Ben moment. But I do love that idea. I love the idea of Aunt May taking Uncle Ben's role to be the catalyst for Peter Parker becoming Spider-Man. Except that didn't happen, obviously, because he had already been Spider-Man. The lesson that Aunt May was supposed to teach Peter, he's sort of already learned. And even then, like Peter says in the movie, she died for nothing. She died for nothing. She didn't have to die, in my opinion. It was really weird. They almost tried to do what PS4 Spider-Man did, with, like, Aunt May being this real sincere character, but she's barely in Far From Home. And she has that really weird fling with Happy, right? Which even in No Way Home, she's like, no, it was just a fling, we're not actually a thing. I feel bad for Happy. I mean, I am more attached to Happy as a character from the Iron Man series and from Far From Home, way more than I am Aunt May. Why am I supposed to feel any sort of, like, satisfaction of Aunt May being this guardian angel sent down from the heavens, to try and, bestow knowledge upon Peter Parker? For great power comes great responsibility. When she treats Happy like dirt, and when she gives really, weird advice to Peter. I'm in my PJs, I don't care. When she gives really weird advice to Peter, right? So I hate Aunt May in No Way Home, but I love the idea that they tried to do. I love that idea of Aunt May being Uncle Ben. I love that, okay? The other thing I hated was the whole memory wipe thing at the end, Because now, just now, 3 movies in and 3 cameo appearances of Civil War, Infinity War, and Endgame. Okay, so a total of 6 movies. 6 movies in, Peter is just now the Peter that people like me realize, right? And what I really like is that this Peter has grown up with an audience. From 2017 to 2021, 4 years and 6 movies. Well, 2016 if we include Civil War. So 5 years, 6 movies. Yeah, he's grown up with an audience, right? The people who were 15, 16 years old going to go see Homecoming and Civil War are now 21 or 20 years old, either halfway in college or just starting college, right? I think that's a great idea. I'm going to take a sip of my coffee now. It's horrible. Anyways, so I love that idea. But it took 6 movies. So now I feel like I'm just now starting to get this Peter Parker, starting to understand this Peter Parker, starting to resonate, starting to relate, starting to empathize with this Peter Parker, really for the first time. And then with Tom Holland being 25 years old, I mean, like, he's a great actor. I've seen other movies he's in. I love him as an actor. Great guy. Right? Great guy. But, I don't want him to play Peter Parker forever. I don't want him to be 35 to 40 years old, still playing Peter Parker. So what I think they're going to do is, if they're doing another trilogy, which there's a bunch of rumors or confirmations about Marvel doing another contract with him, I don't know about that all specifically. I just know the idea is there. If that is happening, what I think they're going to do is they're going to make movies similar to kind of like what I've been wanting, or what most people kind of expected, more similar to Raimi and Mark Webb kind of style of an adult Peter Parker on his own kind of deal, right? The young adult versus mid-teen, right? So I think they're going to do that with the next trilogy. If I had to give specific plot elements, I will at the end of this video, because I came up with some really cool ideas that of course they're not going to do, but it would be really cool if they did, right? Whatchamacallit, what was I even saying? Oh, anyways, I think it's a good idea, that they're finally going to make him like a young adult. He's finally going to be the Peter Parker that people like me, or more people like me, can resonate with, like stuck on his rent, or stuck down on his luck, trying to pay his rent, okay? Has relationship problems. His girlfriend doesn't remember him anymore. He has no friends, right? Both of his parents are dead. Okay, no one remembers him, not even any of the older heroes. No one remembers him. He is literally a nobody now, except for Spider-Man. So, all that jazz, I'm looking forward to that new aspect of Tom Holland, to that more relatable, to that more emotional, to that more stoic Peter Parker from Tom Holland. I'm really looking forward to that. Really like it. I don't like that it took 6 movies, equivocally. It took 6 movies and a huge in-game-like memory wipe spell for us to get there. Like, I'm not asking for writers and directors to have a whole plan written out step by step by step, 5 to 6 years in advance. But when you start a Spider-Man movie with elements that aren't really inherently Spider-Man, like, having the whole Karen suit given to him by Stark, yada yada, okay? And you build a whole franchise off of those things, when that gets cut because of other writers and directors, you're kind of left writing yourself into a corner, which is what they did for Far From Home, okay? And then they're like, oh, well, what are we going to do from here? We thought it would be cool for Spider-Man's identity to get revealed to the world, because that's relatable, because, he's exposed and he doesn't know where his life is going. It's crazy, yada, 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 which is true. So then they, what do? They make a memory wipe spell to make it like nothing ever happened. Now, Peter remembers everything, so Peter has learned the lessons that he has learned. But it took 6 movies. It took 5 years So I almost feel a little bit, not entirely, I almost feel like I wasted my time. Just a little bit. I'm invested at this point because I'm looking forward to the next trilogy. So this trilogy I didn't really like. I loved Far From Home, a solid like 9 out of 10 film. Homecoming 6 out of 10 for me. No Way Home probably like a 6.5 because the fan service just wasn't enough in my opinion. Oh yeah, small little rant before I go on to my thoughts for the next trilogy. I think the whole Tom Hardy Venom thing showing up at the end or for the end credit scene of Let There Be Carnage just to be wiped back at the end of No Way Home, really stupid. Really stupid. And I get the fact that he was there to leave part of the symbiote, but that was dumb. Just make a Venom and Spider-Man movie where they're together or fighting each other or something, right? Because what they're gonna do is okay. What they could have done was they could have done the Venom symbiotes and whatever within the MCU. They could have done that, but they didn't because obviously Sony is doing their whole thing with Venom and it's working. So they don't want audiences to get confused and be like, oh, well, we have Venom in the MCU, which is totally different than Venom in, the actual Venom movies. So I understand them not wanting to just do another Eddie Brock, another Venom, and yada yada in the MCU. So they wanted to crisscross at some point. Okay, so this is how they did it. So they're not, in my opinion, they're not going to do an Eddie Brock in the MCU. What's probably going to happen is we're going to get a setup to Agent Venom. So this is I'm beginning my ideas for the next trilogy. Okay, so Spider-Man 4, the next one, whatever it's going to be called, right? The fourth MCU Spider-Man movie is going to be Kraven the Hunter. It's going to be Spider-Man being hunted down by Kraven the Hunter, because now, since nobody remembers Peter Parker, everybody just knows Spider-Man. Spider-Man is this big, huge deal, right? Kraven sees it. Kraven's like, oh, I'm going to hunt him. And then, we could get the whole, like, Kraven's last hunt thing. But not only is Kraven hunting Spider-Man, Kraven is hunting the Black Cat. And the reason why is because even though Zendaya is still going to be in this trilogy, right, she is not Peter's love interest anymore because of the whole memory wipe thing. To complicate Peter's life even further, he meets excuse me, he meets Felicia, aka the Black Cat, and they kind of get a thing going a little bit during the whole Kraven hunt thing. Okay, end of the movie, Flash Thompson gets the Venom symbiote. Oh, my nose. Jeez. So that's what I think is going to happen in the fourth movie. Or that's what I think would be best if they did for the fourth movie. Kraven the Hunter with the Black Cat. Okay. 5. For Spider-Man 5. Okay. Here we have Spider-Man and Black Cat start dating. Maybe they have some like relationship issues. Okay. The first quarter of the first act is going to be the two of them. Okay. Peter meets Harry Osborn. Okay, and then during this time too, when Peter and Black Cat are trying to get their relationship together, meanwhile, Peter Parker meets Harry Osborn, right? Flash Thompson gets the Venom symbiote and starts wreaking havoc, okay? Black Cat and Spider-Man have this huge fallout, okay? They're about to break up, yada yada, and then boom, Flash Thompson as Venom breaks through like a bank or something, and Felicia leaves, and Spider-Man has to save the day. Felicia is not seen in the movie at all anymore. It is implied, either in an after-credit scene or at the end of the movie or whatever, that she just goes back to being a cat burglar, right? So, but Spider-Man deals with Flash Thompson. So throughout the movie, Peter is trying to save and cure Flash Thompson from the Venom symbiote using Harry Osborn's help and his technology. Okay? So this establishes Harry and Peter's relationship as they team up to fight Venom. Okay? So into the movie, they end up helping Flash Thompson basically stabilize the Venom symbiote, and then we have Agent Venom. Okay, he gets enlisted into Shield or Sword, whatever the MCU is doing with that now. And then we go into Spider-Man 6. Okay, Spider-Man 6. So Spider-Man 6 is essentially, shoot, I'm trying to remember specifically. It's Peter Parker versus Harry Osborn to some degree as the Goblin, or maybe Ned. It might be Ned being the Hobgoblin. Excuse me. But either way, there's a Goblin fight. It's either going to be, oh, actually, it would be cool, is if Harry turns bad. Okay, Harry turns into the Green Goblin. Okay, Peter, can't beat him on his own. Then his relationship with Ned starts to spur back up. Okay, so they become friends again, and because Ned is there to help, Peter is able to defeat Harry Osborn as the Green Goblin. Okay, and along the way, probably meets Miles, right? Probably meets Miles, and sets up a little bit of future Spider-Man stuff. After credit scene of Miles getting bit or whatever. Of course, Sony is doing their own like animated Spider-Verse stuff, which worked really well in 2018, right? Which is arguably why we have No Way Home, because that movie did so well. They were like, "Oh, this multiverse stuff is a bunch of money. Let's do it for live action." And then they did it for live action, and then we got No Way Home, right? So, they might just want to use the same actor that does Miles, but for the MCU thing, or maybe they would want to hire another guy, but that would be like really, really weird. Obviously, they're two different stories because it's two different types of movies from two different companies. Whatever, however they would want to do that. But anyways, the sixth Spider-Man movie would be Spider-Man being friends with Ned again, and then probably meeting Miles, who is a friend of Ned's from college or whatever, right? So that's how that would relate. Miles gets bit by the spider, and we are done with Tom Holland movies. Okay, Tom Holland will no longer be the lead role in Spider-Man movies. It's going to be Miles. No, excuse me. It's going to be Miles from here on out. And maybe in the first Miles Morales Spider-Man MCU movie, Tom Holland will be a co-lead, trying to teach him how to do this, how to do that, yada, yada, yada. Excuse me. But if that were to happen, we definitely won't see that until like 2028 at the earliest. Maybe even 2029 or 2030. Okay. But anyways, that's my thoughts on No Way Home and a possible upcoming second trilogy for the MCU Spider-Man. So let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. Did you enjoy the movie? What would you rank it? Was the fan service enough for you? Was it not enough for you? How did you feel about the plot on its own? Yada, yada, yada. Let me know in the comments below. Yeah.